ask Chad would like to ask. I know Chad, he'd like to ask a question. We haven't heard from Chad yet.
Sure.
Hi there. I was just wondering, first of all, can you hear me right now? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Do you think there's any sort of geographical specific regions or like features in nature, like mountains, mountaintops, streams, whatever it is, that like grays are for whatever reason attracted to, or they're more likely to hang around?
Awesome question. So I don't have any personal knowledge. I have some intuitions about it, and I also have done some research on some of this. It does seem that there's some connection with electromagnetic lines and electromagnetic radiation, and there are some theories that the beings travel on them, and they're also highly sensitive. Okay, I do know that they're highly sensitive to feeling. So I think the idea is that there's more kind of like, electromagnetic wise going on the planet than we sometimes see, and so that creates hotspots. Yeah, so you get certain effects in certain places, and then you get interest from other beings wanting to be in that space. So if there's a place that has a high electromagnetic field, you'll sometimes find there's a high probability of beings, or people see have a lot of propensity to see UFOs there. So I do think that that's actually accurate. I think that there's certain connections to certain land and geography. I totally believe it. And sometimes it's also because there's a base there. So like the Winnipeg UFO flap, I don't know what was in Winnipeg that made them want to be there all the time, but there was clearly a base out there because there was so much activity. But then I think, Ian, what you mentioned to someone, Brian, that Vancouver has a lot of UFO activity, or the West Coast. So Crystal, you're on the West Coast, I'm on the West Coast. There's a lot, and the California, for some whatever reason, has the most sightings. Every MUFON newsletter, it's California always. And so yeah, there's something going on with geography, and I do know the beings are sensitive to the electromagnetic fields.
Yeah, I wonder if it has something to do with like the fault lines or anything like that.
Yeah, you know what? Knowing them too, there's probably a whole science here that is just that humans don't even have, that don't even touch. Yeah.
Well, I can talk to some of that. In Mexico, when I first went to Mexico, the UFO sightings, I stayed in the city of Atlisco, and it was about 20 miles away from Popocatépetl, which is the world's fourth largest volcano. And that volcano was well known for a lot of UFO activity. And that's where I started my research there. It actually lies on what they call the 19.5 degree parallel. And this is a parallel that other researchers say is almost like a universal law or feature, that other planets have this energy field at 19.5 degrees. That's the latitude. And we have the so-called rings of fire or volcanoes where there is this energy upswelling. Well, that's probably of interest, even if it's only for research from alien or other non-human intelligences. But it could also be because some of these inhospitable places, such as volcanoes, and you mentioned Winnipeg, etc., in the lakes and in the deep waters, there are certain places in hospitable places for humans which serve as bases for non-humans.
And Jeff, I have another question. It seems from listening to you, like overall, would you say that you feel like the Greys mostly mean well?
Yeah, I have. So where are we? 11, 9, 8, 9, 10, 11, my contact events. My first 8 were just phenomenal with them. They spiritually developed me. I did all these presentations on them. And I think they're just highly misunderstood. I think that I think they're highly advanced spiritual beings, and then they kind of run into conflict with some human perspectives. Like one of the ones I keep touching on is that humans are very attached to the body, and so we identify ourselves with our bodies. We think we are our bodies, and then when we die, we learn we are not. And I'm certain the Greys they do not do that. They do not identify with their bodies. So there's this conflict that gets created when they need things physical from the body. So then they seem to not, or at least it seems in the early days, they seem to really not care or not notice or not concern themselves with that. And then it would kind of create trauma for people. But they were still, it's hard for people to wrap their heads around how that can happen and yet they'd still be highly spiritual beings. But this is, you know, this at the end of the day, these are aliens, and this is, it's outside of our box how some of this stuff happens. But yeah, go
Sorry,
ahead.
I was going to say, I'm wondering if it's maybe not so much a spiritual being thing, like they're more advanced spiritually, but maybe they're just simply something that is completely different from the type of being we are. And maybe what they are is not necessarily what we view or idealize as being spiritually advanced, but maybe it's just simply something totally different that we just can't grasp. Because one thing I also don't understand is why they seem to kind of confuse or put people in a state of confusion, like you mentioned yourself, where you know it didn't really seem like you were able to have a normal conversation with them like you would with myself or anybody else in here. I was just wondering what you felt about that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they always, well, in their ships, they always dominated it. They always dominated the conversation. And yeah, it's like they kind of, well, they also, there was a feeling of like controlling the scenario because they're often trying to be timely. So then you're kind of just like there. And very like, so they give me opportunities to ask questions. And so as the elder said in the first contact event, yes, here you can ask some questions and the next one. And so I get the free space to actually ask what I need to ask and talk through things. But everything's also telepathic. So all the words I put up on the screen are me translating what was internalized to me. And I have to translate those things out. And the telepathic communication is a bit stranger. It's not straightforward at all. I don't form the normal words or the normal communication I would in a telepathic communication. And often, sometimes they can just read into the thoughts I was having, and then they're responding to things. So it is a bit strange. It's a bit of a different environment. What I want to say to your first part, though, as well, too, is yes, it is definitely 100% out of the box. But it is because you should check out my first contact event. So they kind of like clarify some things with me, that the spiritual experience that humans have is something that they have as well too. So then they actually do have a space with which they can remove their bodies, and then they end up being just a pure energy form. And people witness this stuff, right? They witness them turn into orbs and these kind of things. And then this space, they did this to me. So then when I was in it, I was in this, what would be translated, as I say, it's a translation. I agree that it's beyond the human brain. And then when we translate it into the human experience, it would be a highly powerful spiritual experience for humans. So it is bizarre. It's not like you see them meditating or you see them in churches. It's that they are just aliens, and then they have these ways of kind of interacting, and it doesn't always translate. Not all parts of it translate. So yeah, they do weird things with the body and strange things, but they did this on purpose to me. This first contact event, my first video, they did it on purpose to show this consistency, that when it's translated into the human realm, it is a high spiritual experience, and it is because you're not your body. But here's the kicker, or the trick of it all, is that what you really are, that spirit thing, then they go further with that. So humans don't even have any books on our planet for the depth of knowledge they have of what you really are, that consciousness and that spirit self, because their technology can interact with it. So it's just, yeah, this just being spiritual touches the top of it, and then there's a whole depth of stuff that goes on and on and on. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. One of the last things I was going to say for right now, anyways, is do you I've heard many stories from people such as yourself where most of the experiences are good and they're fine and they don't leave too much trauma. I know you said you had a bit, but they don't leave too much trauma. It seems nice and whatever. And then there's other people who seem to think that these things are like the most evil creatures they've ever come upon or could even envision. Do you think that there are that these grays that those people are encountering are the exact same type of grays. And I've also heard things before, such as I'm sure you guys have as well, that the grays are just like bionic or worker bots for the reptilians or the Dracos or something like that. So are they really advanced, or are they just the product of engineering or programming? What do you think about that?
Yeah, awesome questions, man. Wait, okay, the bionic part. Oh, I have an answer for that. Oh yeah. Okay, so the kind of horrible experience too. Listen, I actually don't know, man. I don't know what these other experiences are. And listen, sometimes when I see people's contact events and they explain them out, or I see them on a video somewhere, I sometimes see different things differently. I see the person, got scared and by something. They created a hologram, and then the person said, oh, they did this hologram and it really terrified me and it did this thing, and I'm looking at it saying, well, I see that being communicating with you. I see different things. So I'm not always 100% certain that when the person walks out being terrified, it was actually meant to be a terrifying event. I also think that the realm that the beings are operating in is terrifying. The realm is terrifying. If the human being isn't actually prepped for an out of body sensation or feeling, not that they were given an out of body sensation, but see, here's the thing. Why are people scared of ghosts, right? With the idea of a ghost, like let's say your house is haunted. Why would that even be scary for you? The reason it's scary is the first thought is it's terrifying, but what it's really doing in the subconscious of the human's brain is it's telling them that there's other things beyond their realm of sensory knowledge, and they intuitively know it, and it terrifies them because they've never gone into that part of themselves. They've never said, or could be spirits be real, and they try to explore that part of themselves. So when out exploring it, it becomes terrifying. So that's why ghosts are terrifying. Ghosts terrify a part of the psyche with which the human themselves hasn't explored. The aliens, the beings, do this exact same thing. They terrify people because they are a presence that is a powerful presence. As soon as you're in their presence, they are a powerful spirit, man. This or energy, this consciousness is intelligent, and it's way more intelligent than you are, and it's way more, and you can feel its power. And so that alone has terror in it. So I see confusion. I see a gray area of confusion with people. Now there could be, for all I know, gray aliens who are just like humans, have a whole spectrum of, you have dark grays for all I know. I don't know that, man. I don't know, but I do seem to notice that there is a breadth of experience, and it may be also something to do with the fact that there's a society, like humans are a society, and they may have versions of the grays. So I think there that could be there. So that's my answer to that's my response to that question.
Yeah. Those are great answers. Thank you for the details on them, by the way.
Awesome.
Do you think there's a chance that they're terrified of being in our realm to a certain degree? Is that why they can't seem to come in here and have normal conversations and interactions with us without some sort of psychedelic thing happening?
Psychedelic thing. Awesome. No, but I do think they're put off by humans. I do think that if the human is a violent human, their thoughts are violent because they're energy beings. They're sensitive to people. I actually think that they're put off. I think that they're grossed out by humans who have violent thoughts, or who have perverted thoughts, or who don't control their minds. I actually think they're grossed out by them. I don't think they're scared. I think they're like, ew. And that they're like that. They're like, ugh. They like need semen from that human, and they're like, ugh, God, why the hell are we doing this with this human? And that they're put off by that human. And I think that's what it's. I think that they're just, yeah, the whole world is different, so they're put off by different things. I don't think that they're scared, but I also, I'm shown that to some degree their bodies can't live here, that the skinny bodies can't grow up and be here, and that's part of the hybridization thing, is that they're getting human bodies for their kind of gray identities. But I don't think there's any fear on their behalf, no. Okay, so you had a question too about the lizard, like as if there's like these kind of guys being robots, and I've heard that before as well too. And so the idea that, okay, I actually 100% think all of them have spirits, energies at the core of them. All of them, the tiny guys, medium guys, big guys, all the way up. But it does possibly seem that they could be cybertronic or like bionic or whatever, like a high cyborgs. They actually could be genetic and then emerging with some type of, well, it makes sense, right? They have these quantum computers. They maybe are making the best bodies that they can make. So then they would, have eyes that can do some weird things. And it seems like their eyes can have lasers or lights that can come out of them. And yeah, I actually suspect that could be the case. But I always do believe that there's a soul, there's a soul energy at the core of it all. And because I have an experience where I have experience with the 3 foot tall and 4 foot tall beings, and they become orbs and they become energy beings. So again, it shows me that there's some kind of energy behind it all.
Transhumanism, transalienism, their own version of it, perhaps.
Yeah,
I hear about this orb thing a lot with Sasquatch as well, and in conjunction with UFO sightings. So I find that kind of fascinating.
Yeah, it's a whole other thing, this Sasquatch stuff. Yeah, I know it. It's really wacky. Yeah. I don't think that they're controlled by lizards. I think that this is it. I think it's this kind of cyber intelligence thing, this AI, this God quantum thing. And then there may be species. Well, I think there is species. I meet them myself with the mantids who are involved. Now, are there layers between the mantids and this cyber intelligence thing? I don't know that. And, but I think that, I think that they work with other species. And I do think that I think that on their level, these beings aren't bad. I'm convinced maybe they are bad. Maybe there's darker beings, but I do think that they try to, like, on their level, on the galactic level, they try to make everything work. And then when it comes to this human realm of this kind of world that we are in, and we have, the effect of lizards or the effect of these men in black and such, I think it's negative for us and it's horrifying for us. And for all of them, it's like, this is the world, this is the galaxy, this is what you're up against. And when you're on their level, it's different. But when we're on this lower level, then they interact with us. You get these species doing and using humans in a different way. And then we have all this morality about that usage. We're saying, oh, it's evil for them to do that to us. But I'm convinced it's the jungle, man. I'm convinced that they have lions in a jungle and you have gazelles in a jungle. And I think the grays are the gazelles and that the lizards are the lions, and that they're still on, but there are a species who tries to keep it all together, who says, yeah, we're in a jungle still. So we do need to work together. And that I do think that happens on a higher level beyond the kind of human understanding. And so sometimes you'll see grays interacting with these lizards. I've heard this before. And I had the impression in the Federation that there were beings in the Federation that humans would term to be ugly, horrible, or hard on us, while they belong to the whole grouping of the galaxy. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool, man.
Yeah, if anybody else has any questions, feel free to go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chad.
I just noticed you talking earlier about,
Harry.
oh, Ian, you've been waiting for a while. I'm sorry, Ian. You go. I've been watching you. You've tried to get in.
No,
you go, buddy.
I just wanted to mention to Jeff. Jeff, you do know that other people have seen the cows on the craft. I mean, you're probably aware of the animal mutilation phenomena anyway.
Right. No, I don't have any knowledge about that, actually. Yeah. I don't know.
I've got at least two cases that I know of people actually seeing the cow on the craft.
Right. Crazy, man.
That's very, very interesting.
Ian, I actually
reference those to you at some stage.
At some point, I want you to tell me how does my the contact event where I learned about the agenda, how does that square off with what you know and what you've learned from everything? At some point, if you can answer that.
Yeah. Okay. It's too vast to go into now, but it is. Obviously, I spoke with Linda before I came on tonight, and she is very interested to know my feedback on the agenda, your point of view from what's happened. You're telling us this evening, so that's good. But with regard to the cow, one of the cases happened in England, actually not too far from where I live, and that was probably, I would say, maybe back in the 1980s. The guy had witnessed he was stopped in his van overnight in a lay-by, had some supper, a takeaway supper, and then he noticed, he thought that they were farm workers in overalls, and they were doing something to a cow, and they were lifting it up, but then the cow went up and up and up, and he realized then that something more was taking place. There were lights, and I think that he might have accidentally switched his light on inside of his van, his cab, and suddenly he had grey aliens coming through his windscreen towards him. Next thing was he was on board the craft, and he saw them working on the cow, or he heard the cow being worked on, or something was happening, obviously. And he said, and he expressed the thought, and of course they could read his mind. And they said, "Don't worry, we're not going to do anything to you." You know, he thought his fate was going to be the same as the cow. They said, "We're not going to do anything to you. You're human." So he was quite, well, I suppose, quite placated by that. But the next morning, he woke up in the van and he found the mutilated cow with mutilation outside the cab. And
Right.
then he made a quick exit because he thought he would be held responsible for what had happened. That's that story.
crazy.
There are
So
other
they
ones.
they purposely made the connection. We take you, we're great aliens, mutilated cow. Yeah.
Yeah, but we're not going to hurt you because you're human.
Right.
But we're going to leave it beside your van in the morning so you'll remember about it.
Yeah, I remember it. Yeah.
You know what?
Yeah.
I heard a theory about the cow mutilation somewhere, and I don't know, probably other people might know about this one, but there was a theory that they needed the enzymes from the cow in
Ah.
order to do some kind of it was about hybrid. It was in relation to hybrids, but the cow's digestive system and the organs that they're removing have certain enzymes that they would need if they were to be I guess creating hybrids for digestive things. Like it was specifically to the digestive system and
You
the
mean for
cow's
humans, Crystal? They need it to help with human production. 'Cause
Yeah, it was
you can use cow's blood for humans in an emergency.
right. Well, they were using the parts for, like, this is a theory. I didn't see anything personally about it, but the theory that I heard, I thought it was fascinating because they had to get it from a cow. Like they couldn't recreate it. They had to get it from the cows, and it was the digestive enzymes. It was something to do with their enzymes in their body.
They probably need it to help humans, right? Or with human, they probably don't need it to help cows. They probably need it for hybrids or humans, I would assume.
Yeah,
I'm
it was
just guessing.
directly related. The theory was directly related to hybrids.
Ah, that makes sense.
But we are. It's still very confusing. Linda studied this for 41 years now, and we still don't know what is actually going on. We know what happens, and we know that it's worldwide, and we know that it's ongoing, and it's still the same, and it has probably gone on since the turn of the century, or maybe even there's medieval records which may suggest the same thing happening then. With it's again, it could be a worldwide sampling of animals where certain parts are taken. There are repeat abductions of cattle from specific locations, but it does show almost like it's the role of, let's say, Crystal, you always called themselves the scientists. Jeff, you used that word and said that they are scientists as well. It could be scientific experimentation going on side by side with whatever they're doing here anyway with humans.
I think I heard Linda say that cats, like random animals, are taken. Yeah.
I've worked with her on the cat populations, which again occur in, let's say, there are certain areas where there's certainly a huge number of cats disappear. In the UK, we got to over 500 cats being mutilated. And I helped her, and there's
Crazy.
from YouTube, there's a couple of coast to coast episodes where I'm talking to Linda about the cat mutilation.
Wow. Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, and that could be another sampling, but we know there's the mutilations of the cats, they exhibit typical mutilations or different mutilations from the cows, but they are not done by humans. They're done with high technology, and there is a trademark marking as well that we've seen on the cats that are mutilated.
Wow.
Remember what you were saying, Jeff, about telepathy and how you're being spoken to, and you don't really have words to say often the ideas that they give you.
Right.
I noticed it in Crystal's video as she's going along and she's speaking freely, but all of a sudden she comes to, and I think you're still here, Crystal. I don't mean to talk behind your back. All of a sudden she comes to an idea or two that is a little bit far-reaching for her, even for her to explain, and she has to sort of toss it off to like a word that's not really that satisfying. And I saw her do it a number of times, right? And she'd so like to have a description of the idea that's been given to her, but she doesn't have words to tell. And I think you
Right.
must go through that as well. I really
Right.
noticed it with her because she wants to tell, but she just doesn't have the words to tell. Are you there, Crystal? Am I insulting you? I know.
I'm here. I can hear you. Yeah, you're
Oh,
right.
okay.
Sometimes putting it into a human perspective, into words when it's telepathic, it's difficult. Some things you can't. It's not it's lost in translation.
Yeah.
Right, Jeff?
And you go right up to the precipice. You go right up to the cliff, and you don't have any other words to tell. So
Yeah.
you'll just have to believe me. We'll jump off this together, okay?
Yeah.
Because that's all you can do. You want people to believe, but you have to come along for the ride sometimes too.
Yeah. Sometimes they use words, and sometimes they're only giving you the telepathic feeling and impression. So then you have to translate. And what's weird about that is that my translation could be different from someone else's translation. So then you're just getting a perspective, right? Which is, so I did my best to translate. Yeah, it's really
I
wacky.
think it depends on how well schooled you are in yourself, how deep down you can express yourself, and as you go through these experiences of both years, many more, I'm sure you get more depth at being able to do that.
Right.
Barry, you need to be a bit closer to the mic. Your sound's low.
Oh, sorry, but
So Ian, you can't share anything with that you got. Is there anything you can share with anything you thought about the like? This stuff just comes to me, right? So these are the memories. So like anything that I don't know if any of this matches or anything adds up, or if you've heard some of this stuff ever.
Yeah, I've heard all of this stuff. There is some new stuff here with I'm particularly interested in the dead bodies. But
Right.
I reference you to Linda Moulton Howe's Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2. I don't know if you've got it, but in there she details the work that she's done in 1991, I believe it is, with 1994 with Linda Porter, who saw the specimens of humans. Actually, yes, she talks about the soul transfer technology that they have, and also I suppose it's Becky Andreasen who also has the experiences of, let's say, seeing the humans in tubes. I did want to ask you
Right.
as well if you can actually forward me some of your graphics, if that's okay, that you used tonight. Obviously, they were spoiled tonight by someone who again, the mentality of that person doing that, they're obviously very disturbed. It's obviously very disturbing.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're talking about, and I know you know
Now.
it's difficult.
Yeah.
But the subject of genetics and reproduction, let's say, on such a higher level, and we had the very base level overplaying it. The
I know, that was
juxtaposition of the
hilarious.
two.
Right.
That was just hilarious, the way that person was picking up on a word and then they would go off on their own little trip. It was just so
see.
funny.
I
It was
really,
so stupid.
yeah. I just see you guys. I didn't follow it. I literally had to focus to keep it going, or else I lost track. So
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I
you did a
ignored
really
it.
good job too.
Yeah,
That was,
yeah.
I was
you
like,
did.
Well
you're holding
done.
it together very well for
so
all
busy.
the ridiculous things
I
on the
deserve-
screen.
I
You
thought the end
deserve
of
a
it was
hand
just
for
great.
that.
Yeah, well done.
Thank you guys.
Applause.
Thank you. I
You-
appreciate it. Thank you.
That was
Really-
Another
hard.
5
really-
hours. It's only been 5
Good.
hours. Let's do some
You
more.
really wrapped it up well. I really thought you put everything together well.
Thanks,
I
guys.
think he got bored.
Yeah,
No,
that was really weird.
yeah.
So, Ian, you want me to send you the graphics? Is that what you heard?
Yes, if you wouldn't mind. I've also got some graphics, and I looked them up while you were talking about your experiences of what you on the physical level, and I was interested to see if they match with what happened with you.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, so what about the Nazis? Like, they right like that's a
Uh-oh.
definitive thing they sent to me, was that they worked with or they exposed themselves to the Nazis. I don't know they worked with, but they showed, like, has anybody heard this before? Like that's
Yes.
like I didn't know what to make of that, and I tried to do some research, and I found a channeling, but I couldn't find anything like that, and so I was like, I don't know what but this was I saw this image. I know this being gave me that image, so I don't know what to make of this stuff. I'm like, yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a video, Jeff. I'll look through my videos on my YouTube channel. It's a video, a very old one, and it's got a lot of real images of UFOs that were built by the Nazis and stuff.
Right.
And it goes into this subject somewhat. Well, you know that they were really, really into psychic stuff and
Yeah, the occult and
occult and paranormal things.
So apparently there was a
So
UFO, and then the person was channeling the UFO, and that's where they got these blueprints, and they were supposed to be legitimate.
Yeah, that was
blueprints.
Maria Orsich.
So I've heard this
the
now.
long
Like,
hair.
I tried to like dive.
That's
The
quite
video
well known and established.
It's very good on that.
Yeah, so I wonder if this was
video is
deeper.
good.
And it's okay. So I'm
Yeah,
interested in
they told
researching.
me that they came here in 1947. That was the date they said. That was during World War II. So they did say that to me.
No, that was
There's a
after
parallel.
World War II. That's post National Socialism.
When I thought World War II ended in
1945.
Oh,
See,
really?
what Jeff is talking
Yeah.
about is the government, the National Socialist government actually meeting with the Greys. He's not talking about Marie Orsek channeling down flying saucer design and then German engineers building it. Jeff's talking about a much higher level of the government actually meeting with Greys. That's what you're saying, right, Jeff?
Yeah, that was what this being showed me, is that there's at some, and it was the Nazi symbol. It was like the Third Reich image, and it was specific, and there was like a warehouse, and there was some kind of interaction, and it was the first time the face, it was also the impression of the face, like they were really conscious of the face, of how terrifying the face is to humans, and that before that they were covering up the face. So I don't know what that meant. And then this time was the first time they were exposing the face. Now, so here's a couple of things too, as I try to like understand why is there different information sometimes? And like I have like new theories as I try to like understand like what, like, does this match? I don't even know if this stuff matches, but I kind of had this idea, like, imagine you just took a random human from our society and then pluck that person up and then have that person explain planet Earth and everything we do, our capitalist system. And you may get so many varied versions, and that maybe like that's what this is. Like this is a version of, this is that gray aliens version of the story. And then it matches with some things. And I just couldn't figure this stuff out. I was like, why? Like I never heard this and I never understood it. But they were emphasizing that they were here and that they've been here and that they were trying to help and trying to curb, and that it was just kind of going in this direction. And then this is the result, is this kind of like program. So yeah, I don't know.
Well, you said before though, they wanted to talk to the human leadership like Eisenhower. So in the 1930s, the Germans were a dominant leadership. So I guess my question is, why didn't the Germans take the offer? If they had a similar offer that Eisenhower would give, would have been nice if the Germans had worked with them. So you're saying that the Germans basically rejected the offer, saying, we don't want to work with you, just the way Eisenhower did?
I don't profess to know what was said. I think that's the, like, because this is the question I have, is like, so did Eisenhower learn about the hybrid program? Like, is that mentioned somewhere? And so that's why I kind of say it looks like they knew it was a threat. Like that's like, that would be a threat. That would be perceived as a threat, right? Like they obviously thought something was a threat, but we don't know what they thought was a threat. And this could be a threat. A hybrid program could easily be perceived as a threat. And I could see those generals thinking it's a threat. Now, I don't know what's being said. I just don't know, man. I don't know the story. I don't know what was being said here. So I don't know what's going on.
Well, we talked about this about a month ago, and you said that, they made an offer to the Germans and the Germans rejected it. At least that was how you.
I don't know if an offer, but they expose themselves, right? Like that's what it is. They expose themselves, and in the process, what's being told to me is that they were trying to curb. So whatever that means, and so if that means they're saying, I don't know what it means. Here's technology, but you have to do these things. That's what it like, which is what it was. It goes down as record that happened at the Eisenhower. That here's well, apparently the humanoids didn't give technology, but the idea being is you need to curb your society. And maybe that's what the Greys did right away. They just said, you need to curb society. This horrible stuff will happen. The future's going to happen. It's going to be horrible. And you need to help with that. And they were like, forget it kind of stuff. So, or maybe they said with some technology, I don't know. I just don't know, man. Yeah. Yeah. It's
Linda actually presented at Contact in the Desert in Joshua Tree in 2016. One of her presentations was that World War II was fought on another level as well, probably with some ET help, perhaps on either side.
right.
I tend to believe that they did work with them.
But then again,
from reports that I've read about the Greys, I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure
the-
they did work with
World War
them.
II may have been fought as a more or less as a proxy war between Earth people, but also there was a struggle perhaps on a more galactic front or something like that. I'm not sure. I don't have enough information, but we do have, let's say, enough reliable evidence that a craft came down at Cape Girardeau in Missouri in 1941, and that was
Right.
there's this so-called documentation which shows that General Marshall was involved. They called it this celestial beings, and that was when we first recovered clones from that crash. Joseph Fowle has also written extensively about the so-called Nazi bell, which was an acorn-shaped device, which may have even had time travel
Right.
capabilities,
I've heard of this
and
thing.
may have even been linked with the 1965 Kecksburg. Very similar
Ian,
craft in that one.
this is Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Hey, Steve.
Hi, how you doing? I've been
Hi,
listening
Steve.
to
Use
everything.
your
as best
camera. Do
I've
you
been
want to
able
use your
to.
camera, Steve? Are you using your
Yeah,
camera?
well, let me get that camera on there.
You should turn
pretty
on
dark
light
and-
too. It's awfully dark.
Well,
You
where
turn
I'm
the
at,
light.
I don't have the daylight, so
Oh, okay.
what you see is what
Well,
you
I
get.
can see your face perfectly.
Anyway, I've actually seen the bell. I actually have in Vancouver, Washington. This goes
Okay.
back to 2005, and this was about 1:45 p.m. on a Saturday, and I believe it was in August. I got the date written down, and what was so unusual about it is it was right near the intersection of St. John's Road and Highway 500. And at that time, that was there was a treed area there, and where I was at a business, and I could see right straight down the road. But what was unusual about that day is at about 1:10 that afternoon, a huge silver sphere, like a pearl in the sky, hovered over where I was at. And I have another witness, which was my brother, and we seen that for about 10 minutes. And it was so large, and it was it'd be over the Vancouver Portland area, that when a full-size passenger aircraft, passenger jet, it looked like a little miniature plane underneath this huge silver ball. And it's something that I've got confirmation on that sometime after that on Google Earth in Florida, there was an area that there was this silver ball that was seen over. I'm not sure exactly where it was. It was one of the bigger metropolitan areas in Florida. But anyway, that bell, I actually seen that it was the shape of a bell, and it was dark. It was very almost a black to it, which was very unusual, I thought, for things. And at that time, I just happened to have a pair of binoculars with me too. So when I looked at it, I got a good look at it, and it looked like what you've seen sometimes on these, the UFO shows description of what a bell looked like, or Unsolved Mysteries, or even the, was it the Kecksburg? When that came down.
1965.
Yeah, that. And so anyway, I'm a witness to one of those. And I do think they probably had somehow been able to do some kind of time travel. Because I think time goes in waves, and it's almost like a boat or a ship on the sea, that you get into currents and you'll go wherever it takes you. And I think this happens sometimes as they're traveling, it sort of gets caught, a vehicle or a craft. So anyway, unusual.
Wow. Yeah. Are you sure you just observed it and there wasn't more involved? Because
Well, there was probably more involved, but the thing is with it, I wasn't in the situation where I could go right to it. It was where I was working at, and I happened to be outdoors at the time. Just all this happened, and my brother was a witness to that too. So, and I've seen lots of UFOs through the years, different shapes, sizes, orbs, and so it's just been part of my life. I guess I feel that time I'm sort of like caught in between different dimensions of time, even where I'll see things and you try to point them out to someone else and they'll go, they either don't see it, or if they do see it, days, weeks, or months or years later, they won't admit they've seen it.
Or perhaps they're being, let's say, suppressed. Their memory's being suppressed.
Probably, yeah. So anyway, confirmation on that. As far as things with the Nazis, through the years, there was a time, well, the internet's changed some too. I mean, there's a lot of things that have been brought out, but I used to go to some of the German sites that everything was in German. And sometimes what you can do is you can use a interpreter program. And I was reading up on a lot of the stuff that was actually the real copies of some of the stuff that's come out through the years. And anyway, I do believe that the Nazis were involved in either dimensional beings or extraterrestrial or interdimensional beings where they were working together in some of the technologies.
I do too. From everything that I've read, it does seem that way to me.
That's right. And
well,
South
the
America.
claim that Maria Orsic made, she claimed that 65 light years away, she was channeling the Aldebaran star system. That's where she got her flying saucer designs. She stated from Aldebaran.
Hey, Jeff, I had a question for you regarding what Steve just said with the interdimensional possibilities, extraterrestrial, etc. Do you think there's a chance these beings, the Greys, are not necessarily from a long way away in space, but that they're interdimensional, or maybe even come from the inside of the planet, and maybe there's a particular reason why there seems to be a theme sometimes of them telling people we're from this star system or that star system? Do you think there's any sort of possibility, even if it's well intended, to maybe deceive us in that regard?
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, like could they be telling us that they're from another planet because we can't conceive that they're interdimensional beings? And so yeah, they're not misintentioned, but they're trying to, like, you know, not break our brains. Yeah, so my take on it is that they are actually aliens from another planet, and that this is the nature of the universe. And that's because it seems like the other species do this as well too, right? They have some dimensional capabilities also. I'm certain that I've read that humanoids turning into orbs. It's like that this isn't just a gray feature, the dimensionality. And there is some record that the humanoids have talked this way to I don't know what government thing I read where it was like a leaked paper, and they were explaining, humanoids were explaining that they actually do live in this other dimensional space. I think that the nature of the universe is dimensional, and I think that these beings have mastered it, and they're from other planets. That's what I think. And I think that and then on top of it, the actually, I don't doubt that they've all been here, and they've been here for thousands and thousands of years. That's what that's the take. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm explained at one point that you know, the grays, that, like she said we made the human body, but she implied like tens of thousands of years ago. So I think that means like interfered with the genetics of the human body, but that would mean that they're here. So, and there's some kind of pointing fingers that seems to be accurate too, so that they've been here for as long as that time. So so then where have they been? And so the possibility that they actually have been in bases the entire time, and maybe versions of the species have been here, and that's the other thing too. Maybe these are just portions of the society or different portions of the beings. I don't know, but it does seem that there's bases here. And they're underground. It does seem that the beings are from another planet, and it does seem that they are dimensional.
Okay.
I like what John was it Brian? He says that the Earth is used by the aliens as a fueling stop, and that's one of the big reasons why they want to keep us going.
I think your sound would be better if you unplugged it all together, because you're not using the mic on there. You're using the mic on your laptop. Doesn't make any difference how you're holding it. I think if you unplug it, or
I'm
just
plugged in by mic. If I was
there's no difference when you hold it up to your mouth. Try it.
I wouldn't have a speaker. I wouldn't have a microphone if I unplugged it. Okay. But just the one thing.
Still a bit hard to hear you, but you can try.
Sorry, I'll stop.
No, you may be a bit louder.
It is a little bit louder, maybe. So just the fact that if it is used as a fueling base, because he says that, I mean, we got the hydrogen, we have all the things, and it's not often that you're going to find another planet like this. It's their sustenance to some degree, where they come to sustain themselves. And this is one of the big reasons why they take care of the Earth, and they certainly most don't want it to disappear with nukes and whatnot.
Right.
So that's it. Okay. I'll shut her down.
I was going to ask something else about your experiences on Vancouver Island, which I believe you had several, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I had three technically. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, yeah. So are you familiar by any chance? I know a guy named Johnny Enoch, who's like a researcher, kind of lecturer, presenter guy. Anyways, he's from the Lower Mainland, and he's been in Coast to Coast a couple times and stuff, but he was doing some research into what he called Canada's Area 51, which was supposedly on Salt Spring Island. Have you ever heard anything about this?
No, I haven't. No,
yeah, this was supposedly back when it was apparently operating. It would have been like 40 years ago, 50 years ago.
Okay.
And
wow.
He was talking about how there's a video on it he made. I can't remember all the details, but I was wondering maybe if that could have had any sort of relation to your experiences, or they could be totally not related, but it was worth mentioning that there was supposedly a military installation of some sort out there on Salt Spring Island, and there's still remnants of it now.
Oh, interesting. And so there was some kind of activity, like UFO activity in relationship to it. Is that the idea?
I'm not totally sure if it was mentioned that there was specific UFO activity related to it, but I believe, well, yeah, I guess there must have been, because the people in the area, he was saying, had very odd experiences, including some of the people who were working there at the time, as well as even like there'd be people like pizza delivery guys who'd come and just hand off the pizza to somebody wherever, I don't know, at some gate or something. They'd experienced some odd things and heard some weird things. It sounded like they're coming from underground and stuff, and people were seeing UFOs, and there was other experiences as well, I believe, with beings. So I'd have to refresh on that, but he's got a channel on YouTube called Metaphysical Source, I believe is what it's called. And you could probably find it on there from maybe a year ago or so, year and a half.
Okay, I'll research that. That sounds
Thank
interesting.
you, Chad. I've been wanting to check him out. He's from Vancouver, right?
Yeah, I met him in Abbotsford, but yeah, he's from the area, Metro Vancouver.
When Mimi and I met him was on June 30th, 2018. There's a conference in Surrey with Richard Dolan, and John Enoch was one of the speakers. I invited him on my show back then and said, yeah, and we had an email exchange, and we just never connected.
I didn't realize that I'd met him.
Yeah, he was one of the speakers there. He was there anyways. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that was
It was
when
the Architects of a New Paradigm Conference.
Yeah, I was at that conference. He
Yeah, we were
invited.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a contact event at Long Beach, Hornby Island, and then Buttle Lake and outside Campbell River there. But there's been UFOs sighted on top of the Chief, or like the Squamish Rocks, and I had a UFO at a contact event out there too. So they've filmed UFOs out there, and so I've had a contact event there. That's the only one I can think of that's kind of similar like that.
Yeah,
it's very interesting.
That also reminds me of the apparent base they had up in the Banff region. I believe that dates back to the 50s or 60s, and it was in cooperation with the American military, I believe. So that's maybe another similar idea, but a little further away from here.
Right.
That's another thing I'd like to look more into. But yeah, it seems like with these experiences and stuff, by the large part of you that seem to have experiences like yourself, Jeff, it seems to obviously follow you around in your life, whereas the rest of us, we might want an experience, but it usually doesn't happen.
Right. Follow me literally, because wherever I went, I couldn't get away from it. Yeah, you got it. Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's powerful. I mean, that's, yeah, you're sacrificed your life in the process too. So it's interesting and powerful, but I have more stories, and not everything is glorious. So
it's definitely a thorny rose.
It is a thorny rose. Yes, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to just speak a little bit about Vancouver Island, because I live on Vancouver Island. Right. I'm going to Salt Spring on the 26th to a retreat. But there are some weird things going on in Vancouver Island, and Ian and I were just talking about it. And so over here, I live in Parksville. We've been hearing a lot of strange noises, sounds like explosions. And people also recently were talking about a very strange, low, kind of a sonic boom over here. So we do have some strange activity on the island. And I haven't seen any UFO activity, but I have noticed some really, really, really strange noises, especially these explosions that nobody knows where it's coming from. And I looked into the phenomenon. It's happening all over the world right now, but it is happening here right now. It's been happening a lot, probably, a couple times a week now. It's a big, huge, loud explosion is one of the things.
And is that potentially, I'm assuming that's different than the rumor I've heard for about 8 years of people hearing strange kind of loud humming sounds and they can't tell where it's coming from. I remember Linda Moulton Howe talking about that 8 years ago when I first heard of it. So I'm assuming you're saying this is a different type of sound?
Well, we've been hearing too, my neighbors have been talking about, everyone's been talking about hearing this sonic boom, this low humming sound. So yeah, one of them. And then the one that I hear is the explosion sound. But we've been getting a lot of.
Don't you think that maybe they're building something underground? That's what I think. Because, when this happened in Denver, people were hearing really, really strange things in Denver. And there's supposed to be a humongous base there under the airport and stuff. So I imagine, I think these booms are that they're excavating underneath.
Yeah, it sounds like an explosion. It sounds like a human thing. It doesn't sound, well, the sonic boom is a little bit weird, but the explosion sounds like it sounds like dynamite or something like that. Yeah.
Who's all in Vancouver? Chad, are you in Vancouver?
I'm in the Fraser Valley area.
Fraser Valley.
Yeah.
Well, so Brian, last night, I don't know who saw this, but did anybody see there was a massive flash of light that came probably around 11 or 12 o'clock. No, Barry, you didn't see it. It was a green flashing light that took over the sky, and it's originated from the ground somewhere. And and it happened once, bah, 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 bah. And then I was like, what's that? And then I looked out the window and it happened again, bah, 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 bah. And I thought, if I don't hear, like, what the hell would do that? And it was massive, and it came from like the Kitsilano area, and I just it was like
Must be
Wow.
you, Jeff. Must be you.
the presentation I'm about to do.
Yeah,
I
you
did
see
do. Yeah.
stuff.
Well, you
not
you
here.
always manage to get pictures and videos of this stuff.
I know.
you
I'm my apartment. It's so perfect where I am. Yeah, I see all these weird things. Yeah.
I will say that in the Kitsilano area, specifically English Bay, I've been out there many times, and there's been 2 times at night where, now, of course, this is probably just a natural phenomenon, but I just thought it was interesting you mentioned a big green light. I've been out there several times, and I've seen these large, bright green, seemingly meteorites just streak across the sky, which is, I've heard, is just a totally normal occurrence, but that is interesting. It's the only place I've ever seen something that color, and it was at Spanish Banks, and it was bright. And I thought, holy shit, this thing's gonna hit the ground pretty soon. What is this? Because I hadn't seen that before. But sure enough, it kind of trailed off and disintegrated at the last second.
Right. Did it leave a tail like a meteor would?
Oh yeah, there's definitely a tail. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Meteors can be green. Yeah. It's kind of weird. I've seen a green meteor too. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but what you were explaining was definitely different, because this thing didn't light up the sky like thunder or whatever. This was just like in its own little spot.
The only thing comparable would be a power transformer blowing up, and maybe it would be that large. I don't think it would. It was so. I'm not near Kitsilano, so it was weird. It was, and I looked for it all over Twitter, and I couldn't find anybody talking about it, and I don't know what I saw, and it's like, that's it. Had no explanation.
Wow.
Yeah, something weird.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. There's so many strange areas out here in the lower mainland. I always think of Pitt Lake when I think of this kind of stuff, but I've heard stories from people, just weird stuff going up on in the mountains and stuff, just such bizarre things. And it may not just be our area. Maybe we just notice it because we have so many people living here. It could be throughout just everywhere in the mountains all over the world. Who knows? But
yeah.
UFOs, Sasquatch. I know somebody personally who I've always been pretty serious with, and he's never really BS'd me much, or he hasn't ever actually. And he was telling me that he was scared straight one time at Pitt Lake because he was out on a fishing boat there in the swampy area in the marsh with his girlfriend at like 11 at night, and he didn't know anything about this stuff, this field, before this happened, but he looked over and he saw like a being that was walking along the path up where the mountain is, where the big trail ends there or whatever, that goes over the water. And this thing seemed to be about as tall as halfway up the telephone poles there that the wires go up to those cabins or whatever it is. And I was like, well, what do you mean? It was really tall. Like, is this like a Sasquatch or what are you talking about? And he's like, no, it didn't look anything like a Sasquatch. It looked like this being had a sort of a luminescence to it. And it was very tall, probably taller than your average Sasquatch. And then I looked into this and I saw similar reportings of this kind of being. Even somebody at that event that Brian mentioned 2 years ago there in Surrey, somebody told me that they had a similar report from some other person in down in Washington.
Well, this was our video just last month. We had Al Matthews describing the same spot at Pitt Lake. There's a walkway between the lake and the marsh, and it's a tall being like a white Nordic. This was someone that he knows had quite a uplifting experience, and Al was saying, oh no, it's all demonic. These loving feelings you have is all misleading. Don't believe it, it's all demonic. So I want to phone Al and find out who this fellow was.
Convince him.
But it's the same place.
Because...
So I think that
same
and
place,
Gordy Tong has told us that's a hot spot for years. He said there's the Sasquatch migration route as well from Pitt Lake to Mission. It's a very mysterious area. Like there's no civilization back there, right? It's all mountains. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've heard because I looked in the Sasquatch thing. I'm quite interested in it, and I've heard people say that they believe there's a migration route there at the north end of Pitt Lake in that general vicinity where they think Sasquatch migrates every year, and it's a hotspot.
I heard the same thing from Gordy Tong. Yeah, I want to ask Crystal and Jeff. You both had the same experience. Jeff, you're saying prior to a cataclysm, you see on the computer screen which people are more spiritual than others. And those would be taken up, and Crystal had this idea or vision of shift out whole 3,000 people. So it seems people who sort of spiritually qualify. I'm thinking the genes, if you have the genetics of the hybrid genetics, wouldn't those be favored when the great cataclysm comes? Would they favor the ones who have the genetic hybrid genes, they would be taken up and then billions would be kind of washed away or whatever the cataclysm is. I think both
Amen.
Crystal and you described a similar thing. Is that how it goes, do you think?
What do you say, Crystal? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that they just said like it doesn't really matter what your genetics are. That had like nothing really to do with it, because they didn't talk a lot to me about hybrids, like almost at all, right? So they just said if you're not listening, then you're not gonna make it, because you won't know where to meet us. Like you have to be able to hear us, and that's telepathically. That is psychically. You have to be able to hear the message. So whoever, it doesn't, you don't have to be a hybrid. I think you just have to be spiritually evolved enough to be able to hear a telepathic message.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. That's good. Brian's referring to, for those who don't know, Brian's referring to, because he has my book, or the first draft of it or whatever. And it's the same, it's the contact event that matches Crystal's, which is where I see the great waves kind of coming over the planet. But mine's like an exercise. So I get into the craft and I'm supposed to help out and save people. You have to save people today. And I'm like, oh, okay, what's going to happen? Oh, the great waves. And I think, oh my God, I think it's happening now. And I'm given the impression it's happening now. And so I have to get on board on a computer and help them. And there's a bunch of humans and we're all kind of all have great aliens with us. And we're on a computer and the computer's measuring the human. So it's what the premise is, it's an invisible craft going over a city. It's really close to the ground and it's obviously invisible. And then it reads the humans below. And then the humans below come up on a computer and we load them in and the computer's reading them. It's reading them and it's reading their consciousness. I understood their body, mind, and spirit. It was reading the details of them. And then it got loaded in and we kind of plugged them in. And then the gray beside us kind of determined if they were going to be saved or not. It was really nutty. And then it turns out this lasted for like 10 or 15 minutes. And then it turned into a thank you for partaking in our test. We were learning if you could handle the hard things that humans will have to go through. And so it was like, so the premise being a Noah's Ark and that they were choosing people and they had technology that could read people. And then they would know who was coming and who was not. And it's really nutty, man. And so it's like Noah's Ark style. And yeah, but then it was like just a test. And
but
then
it seems to be true though. I mean, if they say it's a test, they're testing for something that's real and true. And this is likely the future of what they're telling you, right?
I don't know.
I've got a couple questions.
What they're telling you though, right?
Yeah.
I've got a couple questions about what you just said there. So